This video was brought to you by Henson Shaving. It's a strange thought that in only one election cycle, the Conservatives went from dominating the polls and winning their largest majority since Margaret Thatcher in 2019 to being defeated in their largest defeat on record in 2024. There are, though, a few reasons for this. First, in 2019, the Conservatives had just gained Boris Johnson as leader. With him only being in office mere months prior to calling the election, he was still very much in his leadership honeymoon period. The public was still won over by his larger-than-life persona, and many of the scandals that engulfed his leadership hadn't yet happened. In addition to this, Johnson was facing a weakened Labour Party. Jeremy Corbyn's Brexit policies were under heightened scrutiny from journalists, and the party as a whole was being criticised for how it handled claims of anti-Semitism. By 2024, though, Johnson had been ousted, the Conservative Party's reputation was in tatters, and the Labour Party had been reborn under Keir Starmer. So some in the Conservative Party are now wondering, with Kemi Badenoch making no progress at all since the election, whether bringing Boris Johnson back could actually be a way of reviving the Conservative Party, bringing it back to the heady heights of the 2019 era. So let's take a look at if and how this could happen. If you're a fan of the channel, did you know that we also run TLDR Global, our channel where we run down the biggest news stories from around the world, including border tensions in Asia or wars in Africa, to economic issues facing the US, and even why this South American leader is so unpopular. Check out the news from all around the world and subscribe today by searching for TLDR Global. Now, we're going to split this video into two parts. First, we're going to have a look at the rumours circulating about Boris Johnson's return and the pros and cons of such a move. And second, we're going to have a look at the specifics of how, technically, he could come back as leader. In the last few weeks, specifically following the Tory party's demise in the local election, some Conservatives began to ask questions about Badenoch's leadership. The Independent reported that senior Tories have concocted a plan to get Robert Jenrick to lead a campaign against her, and the Times reported that grassroots Conservatives were considering a confidence motion against her to try and put pressure on her to resign. For many, though, the issue is that getting rid of Badenoch is just the first move. Conservatives then have to consider the next step of who exactly could succeed her. Now, as we've alluded to, Robert Jenrick certainly looks like the favourite right now. He's seen as a competent politician and someone who is more credibly right-wing than Badenoch. For some, this is an advantage as it allows him to take the fight to Nigel Farage. However, others see this as a massive disadvantage. Trying to out-Farage does come with its own risks. If not done well, it's a strategy that guarantees they'll simply fade into irrelevance, especially in the eyes of the media. After all, why would the media want to report on a bland Farage tribute act rather than just getting a comment from the man himself? Ultimately, this is one of the biggest problems facing the Tories. As a third, or by some polls even fourth-placed party, they need media attention. Ed Davey has figured this out and developed a strategy of his own to garner such attention. And for some Conservatives, Boris Johnson could be the solution here. He's bombastic, he's controversial, and to many he's funny. He can attract much needed media attention. And on top of this, he's successfully built a wide electoral coalition before, winning over not just traditional Conservatives, but also people in traditionally Labour areas as well, known as the Red Wall. Even now, there's an indication that he could prove an electoral asset to the Tories. Among the electorate as a whole, as well as 2024 Tory, Labour and Lib Dem voters, the electorate preferred Johnson as Prime Minister to Farage. He's also more favourable among Conservatives and Reform voters than Badenoch. Obviously, Johnson is a risk, there's no denying that. He's a people pleaser and he struggled to punish problematic allies. He's also got a slightly strained relationship with rules and political norms. Not only this, he also comes with significant baggage. Many are frustrated with him and his lockdown rule breaking. Others are frustrated with his decision to lock down in the first place. Some dislike his Brexit deal, claiming it was too soft. Others dislike his decision to advocate for Brexit in the first place. What we're saying is, having already been Prime Minister, people have already developed his opinion of him. And for many, it's not positive. That just means that he doesn't have the blank slate that other candidates do. However, for some, these trade-offs are worth it. So those are the broad pros and cons of a Boris Johnson comeback. But is it even possible? Well, there's been a number of reports in the last year that he would welcome a return to frontline politics. Most recently, The Times reported that a Johnson ally claimed that he's never stopped toying with the idea, and that he wants to remedy his record. He wants to be world king again. And to be fair, Johnson himself did actually give us some indication that this might be the case when he was Prime Minister. In his final speech to the House of Commons as Prime Minister, he declared, "Mission largely accomplished. For now." And some see this as something of a promise to return. If this is the case, how could he actually return? Well, there's a few things that would need to happen. Firstly, obviously, Badenoch would need to be removed as leader. For this to happen, 15% of the Parliamentary Conservative Party needs to submit no-confidence letters to the chairman of the 1922 committee. Currently, this equates to 18 MPs. Now, it's important to note here that a no-confidence vote cannot be triggered for 12 months after being elected leader, so Badenoch is safe until at least November. After then, though, all bets are off. Now, once a no-confidence vote is triggered, if more than 50% of Tory MPs vote that they have no confidence, then the leader falls. Now, the current rules stipulate that only sitting Tory MPs can stand in the election to become the new leader, meaning that technically right now, Johnson is ineligible. However, constitutionally, there's nothing preventing anyone from outside the Commons from becoming party leader or Prime Minister. So the 1922 committee could theoretically change their rules. Much more likely though, Johnson could be parachuted into a safe Conservative constituency, if such a place still exists, in order to allow him to stand and become an MP. For this to happen, a current Tory MP would have to step down, trigger a by-election, and allow Johnson to stand in their place. And then Johnson would have to actually win the by-election. At a time when the Tories are polling well, this would certainly be doable, especially as a notable figure. However, given the absolutely shocking Tory polling right now, this could prove difficult and potentially humiliating if Johnson didn't succeed. Then finally, Johnson would have to win both stages of the Tory leadership election, the MP ballot and then the member ballot. At the moment, all we really know is vague speculation about Johnson's return. As the Tories continue to tank, we'll have to wait and see whether Johnson does want to roll the dice and attempt a comeback. Now, lots of people actively don't like shaving, and it's getting increasingly expensive, with razor brands selling overpriced cartridges stuffed with useless technology. And even if you do pay for all of it, you're often going to be left with a bad shave anyway. Razor burn, ingrown hairs, and irritation. That's a problem that Henson aimed to solve with their new razor. So in typical TLDR style, let me explain why Henson's razors are better for 3 reasons. Firstly, Henson's AL13 razor, which they produce at their aerospace machine shop, holds blades at a perfect 30-degree angle, extending the blade just 0.0013 inches past the shave plane. That's less than the thickness of a human hair. Now, that's important because it keeps the blades supported properly, unlike many other companies' blades, and ensures a better protection for your skin. Secondly, they're just cheaper. Those fancy blade cartridges are full of single-use junk, which makes each individual blade way more expensive than what you actually need. By contrast, Henson's razor just takes totally standard blades, which cost just a few cents. And that means that you can both save money and refresh your blades more often, so that you don't need to keep dragging a dull razor across your face to try and get value out of that overpriced plastic. Finally, speaking of plastic, those cartridges aren't good for the environment either, with 2 billion razor cartridges thrown away each year in the US alone. That's just not true of Henson's blades, which contain 0 plastic, even in their packaging. So if you want to try it out, go to hensonshaving.com/TLDR or click the link in the description, and then add a razor and 100 blades to your cart. Once you've done that, you just need to apply code TLDR at checkout and you'll get all of those blades absolutely free. Plus, they'll know you came from us, which really helps us out too.